Welcome to another fantastic Road to Hollywood. We're so excited tonight. It's time to rock. You know, we got a special guest in the studio who's got a big history, you know, in the business. Played with a lot of bands, recorded a lot of bands, a lot of household names, and we love it. We can't get enough. You know, the Road to Hollywood is all about giving you that behind-the-scenes look at not only the making of great music, but to educate you, you know, to give you some inspiration on where to take your career. So without further ado, today's guest is an old friend. He's a big supporter at IES, and he's a multifaceted musician, writer, producer, recording expert. Welcome to the show. It's WillieBasse.
Hello. How you doing there, Jay?
Well, thank you so much for coming out, Willie.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, we were just reminiscing on the way over about the incredible music of the 70s. You know, we love the 80s, we love the 90s, we love where we're at right now.
Yeah.
But there was something very, very special about that music, you know, coming out of the 60s, the 70s, just when you look back at the amount of classic albums that were recorded in that era, it's absolutely staggering. And I understand you moved out here to LA right in the middle there, the bicentennial year, 1976. So tell us about, you know, how you got involved in music, growing up in Texas, and, you know, of course, all the stuff that you did, you know, once you got to LA.
Well, you know, I grew up, I started in church. You know, I've been singing on stage since I was 5. And I was a choir boy between 10 and 15. I sang classical. And this was, you know, the Texas Boys Choir is a very, very successful, you know, we won 2 Grammy Awards. We worked with E-Power Biggs. We premiered Stravinsky's Mass in C minor, worked with Burl Ives. You know, I sang at Carnegie Hall and, you know, Radio City Music Hall when I was like maybe 12. And it was only like 10 kids, you know, so they didn't have a PA back then in that venue. So you really had to project, and it had to be good. And that actually, that show at Carnegie Hall was the show that we got signed to Columbia. Yeah. So,
and which group was this?
The Texas Boys Choir. So that I was in the choir between 10 and 15. So we were making albums, and I was touring and making albums
And this was all
way
singing?
back then, you know, between 10 and 15.
As a vocalist?
As a vocalist, yeah.
Now
Classical.
Tell us about how you
Hardcore
started.
classical.
How you started playing instruments and how all the
Well, you
the
know, my
garage
voice
bands.
changed. I was no longer like an alto. I become a baritone, and so I graduated out of the choir and started playing bass. I play bass by ear, but vocally I could sight read anything. You know, you had to.
Yeah.
We had to have perfect pitch. You know, we studied for 2 years before you would ever hit the stage with the choir. The choir won 2 Grammy Awards, and it was for an album that we did called Glory of Gabrielle. And that's on. It's still issued on Columbia today.
Wow. Now, how did that morph into, again, playing live instruments and forming your garage bands and all that?
Yeah, when my voice changed, that was I was 15, and that was right about the time they had the forced busing. So they had the black kids bust into the white neighborhoods, and they tried to do the forced integration thing. So, you know, I did real well with the transition myself, but I wound up meeting these rock guys, and my best friend, his
Dallas
mom,
Fort Worth area.
yeah, and my best friend's mom owned one of the prominent nightclubs in that area, so we, you know, got to rehearse at his mom's club, and you know, it was very adventurous. And then I wound up playing with a lot of horn bands, like you know, 7-piece horn, you know, 3 to 5 horns, and then
This was back in the days of Chicago and Blood, Sweat, and Tears and all that.
yeah, a little bit before or right as they came out, you know.
Okay.
So the beauty of it was that we had so many good bands and music and groups to influence us. We had James Brown, the Supremes, Dave Clark 5, the Beatles. Me in the era that I come from, we had a vast array of music, that I was exposed to besides the classical stuff.
Yeah.
It was great going out of the classical for 5 years, and then, I was in a blues band, and we backed up people like O.V. Wright, Z.Z. Hill, Johnny Taylor, Dolomite, the dude,
Rudy Ray Moore.
Rudy Ray Moore, dude. I played behind Rudy Ray Moore.
Wow. So this kind of like a little chitlin circuit that came through
Oh,
Texas.
absolutely.
And you
That's
guys
just
backed
what
them
we
up.
called it, dude. It was like, dirt streets and
Chicken wire in front of the stage.
Man, we
or what?
played at a place called the Chicken in the Basket in Fort Worth, Texas. Man, that was our home. And
I mean, did you
it's
have
where
any? Did you have
James
any
Brown came there and wanted to sign us, man. And they offered us anything we wanted, and they said that they would
sign you to King Records?
Well, he wanted us to back up this girl that he had signed, and then he said after we did that and did the tour, then we could come back and do our own record. And my guitar player and the drummer, they had kids and stuff, and they didn't really want to tour that heavy.
Sure.
So they never called them back, dude. And
Wow.
and that was the sort of like the straw that broke the camel's back.
Right.
When they didn't,
History could have been rewritten
it's
for
like,
the
how
one
can
phone
you
call.
look somebody like James Brown, and he's going, "We'll give you anything you want."
Right. Name what you need.
You know what I mean? They could have went, "Well, I wanted to fly my old lady in every, once a week or twice, twice a month or whatever," and they didn't even pursue it. So I knew it was time for me to go.
Well, we had Frankie Cashwati from P-Funk and Bootsy in here recently, and he said one day they're playing like the church social. Next day, Mr. Brown called from. They're on a Learjet flying to this
That's what I'm talking about.
big convention center. I mean, they're playing a big venue
Well,
and no rehearsal.
Well,
James would name out the name of the song and the key, and you had to be on point.
Oh yeah, that's how my success story with Buddy Miles was. Because when I got out here, I had nowhere to live, and so I landed on Hollywood and Western, and I was sleeping on that bus stop there, but I had all of this bass gear, and so I was vacuuming the floor at Buddy's rehearsal studio.
Wow.
And cleaning the bathrooms and trade
was right in
for
the building right there,
and
Hollywood
trade for a
Western?
locker to keep my gear in.
Yeah.
And
They had a rehearsal hall up in the building.
but Buddy Miles, he had
Yeah.
a place called Dress Review. It was on right there by what used to be Music Grinder.
Yeah.
I think Korn and
Right.
owns it now. But
Just west of Western.
yeah, I slept on that bus stop right there. And then, when a couple of years ago when I had the Money Grind album out, I bought that bus bench and had my billboard on that bus bench. It
Right.
was
Well, that's
full
coming,
circle,
Yeah, it is coming full circle. Talk about again a guy from Texas, making that move out here to L.A. You're right in the middle of a really prime. I mean, not only does Texas have a great scene, because I went to junior high school in there. I was playing in Lubbock, the home of Buddy Holly.
Oh,
and
cool.
All that. So
Yeah.
I know the roots, but
we played Lubbock. a
yeah,
lot.
coming over to California, what was it like hitting the ground running? Like you say, you're basically trying to find out where you fit in, but just the amount of talent and
I was
activities.
very, very fortunate because my partner, my drummer, the guy that his mom owned the club. When the first day I got to L.A., we're on the freeway, and I look over and there's an Indy car on the freeway. So it's been like that the whole time in
Yeah.
LA. You never see anything like that in Texas, man.
Right.
But we get here and there's an Indy car. So we get an apartment and get Rodney Bingenheimer is my next door neighbor.
Are you shitting me?
And We fell in
And
with
he's
Buddy Miles. We
discovering
fell in with the
the
people at the
Runaways
record plant.
and Van Halen and
Oh, he had Rodney on
but
the
Rodney
Rocks.
was the first one to ever play the Ramones and everybody.
Well, yeah, he also helped get David Bowie and Rod Stewart going over here.
Right,
You
the
know,
whole
a lot of
Rodney's
the
English
British,
disco.
the British thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, all that sweet. And
So
T-Rex
that was,
and-
you know, that was cool having him as a neighbor. You know, seeing all of that go down. But it's just been very fortunate like that. You know, being at the record plant, recording, you know, playing on Stephen Still's demos, and David Crosby's my daughter's godfather. So you know,
Wow.
it's just crazy.
So it's pretty much about being at the right place at the right time, ready for anything.
Well, absolutely, because I was sleeping on the bus stop, and Buddy Miles, the bass player, got pneumonia in Seattle or something, and he's like, "Bass, I need you to fly into Dallas." My first gig with Buddy was in Dallas, and I'm from Dallas, Fort Worth, so it's like, I'm like, learn the songs on the flight, you know, and you know, I was with Buddy for about 5 years.
Wow. I mean, just the
Crazy.
stories of Jimi Hendrix and the Band of Gypsies and all that must have been incredible.
It was amazing. Buddy was the only drummer that I've played with that could take a drum solo and girls would just start taking off their clothes. You know, he'd do a drum solo and the whole front of the stage would be bras and panties. You know, and he just had that tribal jungle thing, man, that he would do. Not necessarily, you know, a lot of notes, but the grooves and stuff. And
Yeah. it was so
you know,
solid.
girls would just react to that and start undressing.
The most basic animal instinct, I guess.
Well, yeah, I mean, there were times when we would go out, there'd be 2 drummers, keyboard player, 5 horns, and 2 or 3 girl, you know, background singers. So, because he would like to get, you know, a lot of times he'd like to go up front and play and sing and play guitar. So we had 2 drummers, and then there were times when they did, you know, 2 drum sets. So it was very, very. It was like going to college.
Yeah, a magical time. No matter what you learn in school, throw it all out the window because you're in the real business. Now, our guest today is WillieBasse. He's a producer, writer, musician. He's an expert in the world of recording. We're going to talk about some of the amazing studios he's put together, the people he's worked with, the who's who in the industry. You might not know their names, but you start looking at their credits, they worked with everybody. We're going to go right now to an interview we just did with Ron Nevison. Speaking of everybody, this guy was recording Led Zeppelin. Then he'd go over and record The Who, Quadrophenia.
The Babies.
You know, I mean, he was everywhere. He probably worked with the Stones and all of them.
Yep.
But this is Ron Nevison right here on the road to Hollywood. We're coming back with our special guest, WillieBasse. Right.
Michael with
Ron Nevison.
Hey.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Okay.
You've given us so much great music over the years. Growing up, who were your heroes? Who inspired you to want to make music and really get behind
Well, I
the
was
board?
a singer in a band. It was like a doo-wop band, but I wasn't the lead singer, but I did backgrounds and I learned a lot about singing. But even before that, I was a soloist at the Temple University Boys Choir when I was a child, from like 8 to 12. And I learned a lot of, I used to sing Mozart. And, learned a lot about singing from that. It was a Saturday kind of thing. So I graduated from that into bands and worked my way into the music business by way of mixing live sound in the 60s, the late 60s, and then going into the studio in England in the 70s.
What was the big break? What was the one job that really led to the door?
My first big job was I was the engineer on the Quadrophenia album for The Who. That was the first big album I did.
How did that come about?
It came about because I had joined a company called Track Plan that was making studios for musicians that Pete Townsend owned. And they commissioned me to do a mobile studio, or mobile, as they say in England, for Ronnie Lane of the Faces, who was a very close friend of Pete's.
Yeah.
They had this Mayor Baba spiritual kind of connection. And so I built this mobile studio in an Airstream trailer that Ronnie Lane had bought. And Pete was doing his own studio for The Who to do the Quadrophenia album. And this control room wasn't finished, but the studio part was finished. So he called up Ronnie and said, hey, can we use your mobile studio as the control room, you know, we need to start working. So I guess I just fell into that, because who better than the guy that built it to run it? And of course, if I didn't do a good job on the first few days, I would have been tossed out, but they kept me for a few years.
Wow.
So, because I did the Tommy film soundtrack after that.
Yeah.
So that was a break, of course, but you know, I was at the right place at the right time, and I did a great job on the studio. And I mean, I used that studio for Zeppelin and for Bad Company and lots of things. We did a lot of mobile recording in those days, renting houses and just going out in the country. And you know, I did actually the first 3 Bad Company albums in mobile studios.
So it brought you into that inner circle. Tell us about working with Zeppelin.
Well, I only did the first half. I did the newer tracks on Physical Graffiti because I didn't know, I had moved on. Zeppelin had a habit of using engineers at one place and then changing engineers, whereas with The Who, I did everything. I recorded all the stuff, I mixed it with Pete. You know. With Zeppelin, once we moved out of the mobile tracking and overdub phase, and they moved into Olympic Studios, they used a guy at Olympic. I also had an obligation to do the Tommy film, which was a year project with Pete. So I didn't know that they were going to go back to the previous album, which is Houses of the Holy, and do use all those tracks. In other words, I didn't know it was going to be a double album until it came out. So, but I did some of the good stuff like Kashmir, and, you know, My Time of Dying, and Sick Again, Wanton's Song. You know, it's all part of my history.
Yeah,
you know.
very exciting. Now talk about Bad Company. Obviously, Paul Rodgers, to me, his voice is as strong or stronger now than
Isn't that
it's
amazing?
ever been. How does that work?
I totally agree, you know.
I mean, talk about the magic
And,
that they made.
You know, well, it was the Paul Rodgers band originally when I started with them, and they didn't have a name. And the record company Swan Song was pressing once we were finishing up singing, because they thought, well, that's good. You know, when you're bad, you know, you're good.
Yeah.
And so that's how the name. They used that song, which Paul had written. The lyrics to I think he wrote the whole song. You know, him and Mick had a lot of songs from their previous groups that weren't appropriate. You know, Mick had a lot of stuff from Mott the Hoople, and Paul had a lot of stuff from Free.
Yeah.
And so when they got together, they had a lot of good material.
Amazing records. So this was
Anyway,
the
you know,
Bad Company,
I know you're
Straight
touching
Shooter.
on this, but my really, you know, I started producing in 1975, and you know, produced lots of acts. You're really just touching on a very small part of my career, even though
It's
they
a
are
massive list.
even though they are, you know, very important albums to my career.
Sure.
I wasn't a royalty artist on those albums. I was like paid $100 a week.
Wow.
But people said, you didn't make money on that? I said, yeah, I did, really. You know, when I came back to the U.S. in 1975 with those kind of credentials tucked under my arm, you know, the doors open wide open for me.
Ozzy Comes Calling,
Ozzy,
UFO,
Kiss,
everybody.
UFO, Babies.
Yeah.
Chicago, Heart.
Yeah. Rolling Stones. So you recorded the live
Love You Live.
Love You Live album.
Yes, I did. Not all of
Okay.
it, but I recorded the West Coast and Midwest dates, and they used the record plant mobile truck, and then the East Coast, they used the record plant East Coast mobile truck with a different guy. So I recorded a lot of it. I mean, maybe 15 shows or something like that. From Chicago to LA to San Francisco to other places.
Sure. So many great records. Obviously, you've done a few with UFO. I mean, the Lights Out album was phenomenal. obsession.
Yeah.
Talk about, the chemistry in that band. I know, I guess Michael Schenker left the group during that period.
Michael left, I did 3 albums, and he left right after the 3rd album, which is a live double album called
Right.
Strangers in the Night.
Sure.
In fact, I was mixing that album at the record plant in LA, and there's a French restaurant next door, and all of a sudden, doobie doobie doo, Frank Sinatra came on with Stranger in the Night, and I just thought, what a cool name for UFO's album, Strangers in the Night. And they liked it.
Welcome back. This is the Road to Hollywood. Some gems of knowledge right there. That's history. That's Ron Nevison recorded those legendary records with The Who, the Rolling Stones, Bad Company, Led Zeppelin. I mean, that is an amazing pedigree. But our guest tonight is Willie Basse. He has been so active himself. The year Ron started producing is the year Willie moved out to L.A. Willie, tell us about, again, the heyday of the Sunset Strip. I moved here in the 80s, so I caught it even though I came and visited a few times earlier. But talk about that legendary, 76, 7, 8, 9. Of course, Van Halen was like the house band around town. We had incredible clubs like the Starwood, the whiskey that's still there, Gazzari's, which is gone, of course. But talk about the feeling in the streets and the magic, that was coming from Hollywood and all the great music.
It was absolutely a magical time. I was there when Ron Nevison was doing the Babies.
Yeah.
And I was, I used to live at the record plant when it was on 3rd Street, and one of our main backers was Gary Kilgren. Yeah. Gary Kilgren built Electric Ladyland for Jimmy. He built the record plant on 3rd Street for Stevie Wonder. He built the record plant in San Francisco for Sly Stone. It was that room had a live-in, dead-in room. It was the only one like that. And, Higher and all those songs were recorded there at the record plant in Sausalito.
Legendary.
And it's funny because Buddy had a ranch in Sausalito, and on one side his neighbor was Timothy Leary, and then on the other side was what's the guy? Tick tock,
Actor, musician?
No, the song, guitar player. Fly like an eagle.
Oh, Steve Miller Band.
Steve Miller was one neighbor on one, and Timothy Leary on the other side.
Wow.
So, needless to say,
flying like an eagle.
there was like some serious recreational drug use.
Well, I got a few Sly stories from that era. So,
Oh, yeah.
But how'd the interest in recording come along?
Well, that's what I was saying. I was at the record plant. I lived at the record plant. We
So
rehearsed and lived
It's kind
at
of
the
like the day
record
job.
plant. So we
You're
would
playing in bands, but it's kind of a day job.
Well, no, I had a band and the owner of the record plant was our backer.
Okay.
So we lived there, and
he
so
was
we
developing.
saw Stevie Wonder putting horns on Sir Duke and songs in the key of life. I was there when Supertramp did Breakfast.
Breakfast in America was done there.
And Tommy Bolan was a good friend of mine. He
Okay.
was doing Private Eyes in the other room. Cheap Trick came in and did Heaven Tonight. Rick Springfield, Working Class Dog. I got to witness so many great albums. Rod Stewart, Hot Legs, and there was just always somebody significant coming in to record there because it was the best studio in the world at that time.
It was nonstop. It was booked one.
And Gary
after
believed that the aesthetics of the studio helped the artist to be creative. He had the roofs would roll back, so at night it would open up and you could see the stars and the moon when you walk through the hall. And a lot of those guys were hanging out in the jacuzzi and fucking chicks, and there was beer in the Coke machines, and but I was following. We were working with Andy Johns. I was following Andy around like a puppy dog, just asking him about the mics and why and what we, And Gary would walk in and he would go, "I don't like the way it sounds," and just have the crew tear the floor out, you know, and put sand under and redo the floor, change the carpets on the wall. You know, he would have murals made of carpet on the walls, you know, because he believed that environment, you know, helped the creativity. So it was a very exciting time, a pioneering time. Bob Margoloff, who did all the Devo stuff, he had a synthesizer.
Did all that.
He had a synthesizer called Tonto. It took 2 people to run it. The synthesizer would take up this whole room. And they did Minnie Riperton. Remember Minnie Riperton,
Sure.
where the birds in that
Yeah.
song, "Loving You."
Loving you.
That was Tonto. That was a synthesizer. It wasn't real birds, and
Wow.
it could talk. The synthesizer could
This
talk.
is before automation or digital or anything.
Oh yeah, and you know, they did Billy Preston and Stevie Wonder with Tonto. So you know, Bob Margoloff did a lot of the Stevie
So
Wonder records. the
Stevie
early
did all
Stevie.
that, all the classic records, the biggest Stevie hits.
Oh
over
yeah,
there?
the early stuff was definitely like Gary built that studio,
Okay.
Studio B4,
Talking
Stevie.
Book and
Talking Book,
the
yeah,
filling.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a
Wow.
very exciting time, and we didn't really know the significance of that at the time. The Eagles, you know, rented the record plant mobile truck, and they also did some recording on the record plant yacht, you know. And when we were going to go on the yacht to record, you know, Stevie Wonder wouldn't come on because we wanted Stevie to put some piano on some stuff, and he wouldn't come on unless there was a 9-foot Steinway on the yacht. And so it was like a Friday, and it got to be too late. We couldn't get one from SIR. So Gary went out and just paid cash for a 9-foot
Wow.
Steinway and had it delivered.
So
And,
Stevie could do what he do.
and he was like, well, I got to have this yacht checked out before we go out. And I'm going to have my buddy come over and check the yacht. And it was like Jacques Cousteau.
Wow. Is
So
that
that's what we
Marina
were
Del
dealing
Rey?
with. That was, you know, Gary owned a castle on Sunset Boulevard. I think Rick Rubin owns it now. It's up above
You talking about
the Source restaurant there.
Okay.
By the strip joint there on Sunset.
Okay. The body shop.
The body shop, but it's on the other side of the street,
Okay.
up on the hills. It was a whorehouse in the 20s. It's like one of those mansions. It was a castle, and it had like, you know, I don't know, 15 bedrooms and 25 bathrooms and a dungeon with a rack bed in the dungeon, you know. So a lot of you know, mayhem went on up there. Angel actually rented that castle to record one of their albums up there. So we
Right.
were around for that.
White Hot
you know.
or Simple
And
or
you know,
one of
I
those.
was there when Kiss, you know, Y&T came up and they had 2 stacks of Marshalls in the pipe organ chamber because there was a pipe organ at the record plant. But I'll never forget Kiss recording there with, I think it was Eddie Kramer.
Okay.
And they had 3 stacks of Marshalls in the pipe organ chamber, and then you had Cheap Trick in the other room, like Nilsson likes to use smaller amps, you know, and he mics them and doubles it and makes it sound big, but they're, you know, he did a lot of the rhythm tracks with a pig nose, you know.
Wow.
But I never forget going, whoa, you guys got 3 stacks in the pipe, and then they look at me and go, the only way to get a sound of a wall of Marshalls is to have a wall of Marshalls. So you know, that was like school, you know, college. And
That's amazing.
you know, I was recording at Cherokee, and Gene was across the hall with Cher and working on his solo album when the Kiss did the 4 solo albums. You know, Earth, Wind, and Fire down the hall, and you know, Journey had been there. I used to watch those guys rehearse. We rehearse up at Gower Studios when Mick Fleetwood had Penguin Studios. That was a big soundstage production area when SIR was on Sunset.
Right.
And it was like a lot of exciting times. I mean, just hanging out with Gino Vanelli, because Michael Shreve, who played on the first Santana album, played drums for Gino Vanelli, and we would just go hang out and
Wow.
It was like awesome.
Hollywood
awesome.
was alive. You had the Capitol Records Tower. You had the A&M lot, the old
Crazy.
Charlie Chaplin building. You had all those companies right there. Amazing time, you know. We can reminisce
magical.
about it. And
Magic times.
yeah, I think what's really important for, you know, aspiring artists and everything is to be inspired by all this greatness, you know. There's no formula to guarantee you're going to make a hit song or a hit record or connect with the public. But I think it's so important for musicians today to have some roots, to go back, and whether it's the 60s or the 70s or the 80s, whatever, you know, really inspires them, you know, that music.
Yeah.
And learn as much about it as possible. The gear has changed, the technology keeps changing and all that, but there's something about those, you know, magical moments, you know. And
Well, that's what I try to
key.
do when I'm engineering. Is I believe my job is to capture the magic of the moment, not necessarily mold them or change them into what I think they should be. A lot of times I interject ideas, but I like capturing the magic of the moment, and I'll move the mic before I, cut and paste or, work on it in Pro Tools. And I just want it to sound organically good.
Yeah.
I think a big part of it is being true to yourself, knowing who you are, being true to that. That speaks volumes.
Yeah. Well, I think it's so key, you know, however you find that inspiration, that it's as organic as possible, because there seems to be obviously more and more of a dependency on computers and Pro Tools and chopping this and auto-tune that. And, you know, after some point, you're kind of wondering how much of this is the artist and how much is the trickery that went down around that. And then live, they can't cut it, and then you got all the backing tracks.
You mentioned Blackmore's Rainbow.
Yeah.
I was in a black punk band called Shivoogie, and we played San Bernardino opening for Blackmore's Rainbow. And
What they call it, the Swing Auditorium, or what was it out there?
I don't remember what it was, but Blackmore was on stage with I'll never forget, he had a reel-to-reel for his delay unit.
Yeah.
Like a TAC tape deck for
Right.
for his slap echo, and he was taking the guitar and throwing it up around the trusses and letting it hang and feed back. He was a master even back then. It was amazing.
Coming right out
This
of
is
Deep
like
Purple
70s, 78, or it's like awesome times.
No, I mean the amazing part. Richie Blackmore's in the guitarist of Deep Purple, the hottest band in the world. They killed him at California Jam, like 300,000 people. And just the volatility of him with that instrument and just strangling notes that never been heard, and the veracity that he would attack that instrument, and of course influence other people. We were talking about Yngwie Malmsteen today, of course. I go back with Yngwie, you do. We're talking about guitarists that were influenced by Richie Blackmore, Eric Clapton, Jimmy Page, all that great musicianship of the 70s that a lot of people say hasn't been captured again, or we're still listening to those records that were made.
Oh yeah.
40 years ago.
Yeah.
There's something about that magic when you're talking about classic Stevie Wonder, talking about Led Zeppelin, the Beatles were recorded on a 4-track.
Yes.
Yes. So that was virtually live.
Yeah.
Good
stuff.
Yeah, incredible stuff. Well, our guest this week is WillieBasse. He is an amazing bass player. He is a producer. He is an expert in not only recording, but just the whole process of bringing live and recorded music to you. When we come back, we're going to be talking about his legendary years being the front man for Slash, right before Slash, of course, joined and formed Guns N' Roses. And we had a very special event at IES recently where Willie took part in it, where we reunited players and managers and people from that era that led to Appetite for Destruction, one of the biggest selling albums in history. Again, our guest this week is WillieBasse. You tune into The Road to Hollywood. Right now, we're going to go to a few clips. These are some of the bands, the artists that came out to IES in the initial year, and they're going to tell you about some of the exciting things they learned and all that. And get your pens and pads ready. We're going to give you all the information how you can be at IES this year in August, right here in LA, and explode your career. Coming right back on the road to Hollywood.
From Sisters Doe, and this is my first experience to this wonderful occasion, which is the IES Festival Independent Entertainment Summit, and I believe all you bands out there should definitely come to this because we got the best opportunities. On one day I learned more than I did about the music business in my whole life, and I mean I'm only 19 so I still got a lot to learn, but in one day I learned so much. We got to meet people and experience talks by Ricky Rocket from Poison, representatives from Pink Floyd, Megadeth, bloody Motor, everything. It was just a great Kiss. Bloody, I love Kiss, they're my favourite band. So all you bands out there, come to the Entertainment Summit next year, and it's going to get bigger and better every year. We loved it, and it was a great opportunity for us. We're Sisters Doe, and we'll see you next time.
IES is the best. If you guys want to meet the people who are going to launch your career, take it forward. If you guys want to learn the things you need to learn to get your career off the ground, come to IES next year. This was great. We absolutely loved it. Check us out.
There's so many people you can meet on a professional level, personal level. It's really cool to come out here and just have a great time. There's a wealth of information, and each day you go home tired of how much stuff you've learned.
It's going to explode.
Yeah.
The Indie Entertainment Summit is something that you cannot miss. It's based right here in LA. It's a fantastic opportunity. You'll meet people you never thought you'd shake hands with. It's awesome. We loved it. We'll be back again. Thank you.
Hey guys, if you get a chance to check this out, definitely go for it. If you're in a spot where you're not signed yet, or maybe you are and you have more to learn, there's always more to learn. Come here if you want to meet up with some industry professionals. You get a chance to actually sit down one-on-one with them at a table. Get to see some performances, get to make new friends from all over the place. There's dudes from Australia, all the way over from Mexico. I'm from Illinois myself. I flew across the country, so you meet a lot of great people. Bring cards and just trade with people, instantly bring some CDs. It's a great experience. I would recommend it. Go for it.
From the manager from Sisters Doe. We're just coming from Australia for this fantastic IES seminar. It has been brilliant. Where are you? You must come here next week. We have had so much success from being at this seminar. We have met legends. We've had some great advice from people from Pink Floyd, from Guns N' Roses, from Jimi Hendrix's brother to Kiss. We've had a ball. Make sure you're here next year. You'll be silly if you miss out. Thank you. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, America. I love America.
Hey everybody, this is Nicole Rachel. I'm here at the IES and I'm loving it. I'm loving the energy, the knowledge that I soaked up by big people in this industry, and they have taught us so much, and I'm just very thankful to be here. And the world is beautiful, beautiful place to be when you have people to support you, being an underground artist, an indie artist. And I just want to say thank you to everybody and have a blessed day. Much love.
What's up, everybody? It's Tab C from Nashville, Tennessee. Listen to me. Indie Entertainment Summit is where it's at. I came here, I learned how to grow my fan base, all right? I had one-on-one meetings with industry tastemakers. These guys, I'm telling you, they've done big things. So if you're not at IES, you're not anywhere. It's like getting a PhD in the music industry direct from the people that are making it happen. So you've got to do one thing. One thing right now is register for IES, make sure that you're informed, and I'm going to see you here next year.
Hi, I'm WillieBasse here from IES, and I've worked with 1 million bands, toured all over the world, worked with a lot of different artists, producing, engineering, an artist myself, solo artist. And the IES Festival has been a great experience. Hands-on, one-on-one with professionals, working independent artists. No corporate BS, just straight ahead, how it's done, what we need to do, focus, meeting people, working with artists, talking to industry professionals. It's been a great experience, and from all different aspects, not just necessarily music, but entertainment in general, films, because it is multimedia what we're doing right now, and the state of the industry, it's about being more than just a music artist. So, you know, we have to have like a triple threat. So it's been very informative. I'm grateful to have been a part of it. Looking forward to next year, and it'll be just even better.
Alright, so Zombie Bass came all the way from Melbourne, Australia to IES, performing at Hard Rock Cafe. If you're serious about performing, come down all the way here. I'm learning a lot of stuff here. It's very good, and yeah, enjoy. If you're serious about music, you can't just go out and play. You got to learn about it first. You got to learn about the marketing, about how to do it, who to play to, and how to manage yourself. And IES is the way to go. I'll teach you everything.
Hi, I'm Joe Kinnick from the Twitch in Vancouver.
And I'm Steve Stone, right here at IES in Los Angeles, Hollywood, California. And if you guys weren't here for this summit, this was the most amazing thing. You missed something, let me tell you. We met the most amazing people, management, record labels, artists from all over the world coming here. And I'm telling you, if you weren't here this year, you gotta come next year. Check out the website. Come and check this out. And you guys, you will not be disappointed. Our career is jumping in leaps and bounds just from this weekend. We got to play the Hard Rock LA. We played the Whiskey A Go-Go last night, and we rocked them on that legendary stage. Let me tell you, people from all over the world are going to be here. And if you want to get your career kick-started, this is the place to come.
And don't forget, this is a chance for you to blow up in your career. This is a chance for you to check this out, because I'm telling you, you're going to learn a lot and you're going to gain a lot, and that's what's important about this, okay? Peace out.
Hi, this is Vince Bonds from indie rock band Free From Gravity. I just want to tell you about the Indie Entertainment Summit. It's been great. We've had a 5 days here where we've met some of the best professionals in the industry. They've given us so much knowledge. We did a showcase on Saturday afternoon. It rocked. Since that showcase, we've had a couple of people come up and want to forward our career. It's gonna rock. If you weren't at the Indie Entertainment Summit this year, come next year. You will so love it. There's so much information. There's so many people you can meet. So many people who can help your career. And if you're serious about your music, get down here.
Back on the road to Hollywood. It is IES. It's coming up in August. This year it's going to be August 6th through the 9th. We're going to pack so much into those days. You know, no matter where you are in the country, no matter where you are in the world, as you see, people come in from everywhere for this, because the heavyweights that we bring in to speak and break down all the success techniques, they're all based right here in Southern California, and they're so busy it's hard to get them out of their office for an hour or two. So you have to do a little traveling, but it all pays off, because the people that you're going to be able to learn from, connect with, they come right off the stage and meet and greet people and exchange cards. The relationships you can start are beyond anything else. I mean, these are not people you can just call and get on the telephone. I mean, super, super opportunities. And we do the case study of a success story every year, and we break down and kind of reunite people that were involved with the early days of success. Our guest tonight on the show, he is WillieBasse. He's an amazing musician, artist, producer, recording expert. And Willie, tell us about, I know there's been some real heavyweights that came through your group, Black Sheep. Why don't you tell us about some of those characters and then lead into a character named Saul Hudson?
Well, okay, I started out as I was the lighting director at a club called the Rock Corporation over on Oxnard and Van Nuys Boulevard, and everybody used to play there. The owner of the club was a roadie for Bachman Turner Overdrive, and everybody played there when Van Halen was still doing top 40. You know, they played there, and the thing was Jeff Simons. He was the owner. He wanted the bands to mix in originals with the top 40. So seen a lot of bands, the Go-Go's when they were a punk band, you know, Wolfgang, which later on became Autograph, you know, all of those bands, Quiet Riot, everybody played there. So that was a great experience, and then I got to play there myself because my drummer was the sound man, and I was the lighting guy, and his wife was the main bartender. So we kind of had the inroad to get favor on gigs there. Somebody big come through, we could open up. But
so talk about some of the pedigree. Who came through Black Sheep?
Okay, well, I was always the guy with the studio.
Yeah.
You know, and so I always had built studios, and you know, when I started Black Sheep, that was after I got done with Buddy Miles. I did a band called Oz on Columbia Records, and then after that was when I started Black Sheep. We were actually the first, well, not the first metal band, because the first rock band on the Motown was Rare Earth. But Motown, Barry Gordy's older brother, Fuller Gordy, took an interest in the band. He's the bass player from the Undisputed Truth, who had worked with Parliament Funkadelic. He took us into Motown, and Fuller really liked us, and so they funded us to record. But that was about at the time when Rick James was coming up, and Rick would go in and cut 3 songs a day. And being in rock, you have to layer things, and I was doing all my own vocals and stuff, and so you know, it would take me like a week to do a song, and they just didn't understand that. But yeah, you know, I was very fortunate to work with, like I said, I worked with George Lynch. George Lynch was in my band before he was in Dokken.
Right.
The drummer from Dokken, who was Greg Pecca, was in that lineup, as well as Pete Castle. And, you know, George pretty much got the call from Don and went to Germany. And that was the beginning of the band called Dokken. Sure. I worked with... Okay, it was like Paul Gilbert, discovered Paul Gilbert. From Paul Gilbert, it went to Mitch. I had Mitch Perry in the band, who's now with Leader Ford. He also played with Michael Schenker, with Macaulay Schenker. He also was in a band called Heaven, and he played with Cher, believe it or not.
Yeah.
So Mitch is awesome. Mitch is playing on my single that I did a couple of years ago called Breakaway. That's Mitch on the rhythm guitars, and George Lynch playing the lead.
And James Kotak from Scorpions.
He's
played in the band, and also
Kotak's
playing with
played on everything I do. He's been very fortunate to have James. You know, he really likes me. I started what happened was James produced DJ Ashba, who's the guitarist in Guns N' Roses now, and I engineered that album for James, and that's how we started working together. And then I did a bunch of recording for Paul Shortino, and then I did some recordings for Terry Ilous, who's with Great White now. He had a band called XYZ back then, and they were doing albums for Japan, and they would do. Each guy would do a solo album, then they come together and do a band album, and they were just turning out albums, and I was engineering all these albums. So I got to work with Sean McNabb, I got to work with Tony Franklin, Carmine, and Vinny Appice.
Yeah.
Engineering that stuff.
A who's who.
Of course.
And then you get a call from Saul Hudson, better known as Slash. So.
Well, the original lineup of Black Sheep was Randy Castillo, who played with Ozzy,
and Motley Crue,
and Mitch Perry and myself. So, and then Mitch, left, and Randy got the gig with Lita Ford, and then went on from Lita Ford to Black Sabbath, and then landed with Ozzy. I think he did like 8 albums with Ozzy or whatever, but. Randy was always cool. He always would come back when he was on a break and record with me and help me track and stuff. But Slash was somewhere after Paul. I think Kurt James replaced Paul Gilbert because Gilbert played on the first album, and then Kurt James finished the album. And then Slash replaced Kurt James because Kurt James went to a band called Driver with Rudy Sarzo and Tommy Aldridge, I believe.
Amazing. Well, I know at IES we had the opportunity to do a case study of a success story, and you were a part of that, where we basically went back, and after Slash was in your group, he ran into these guys from Indiana and, of course, his buddy Steven Adler from Fairfax High, and formed Guns N' Roses. And
Guns N' Roses started out at my studio.
Is that right?
They were L.A. Guns. L.A. Guns used to rehearse at my place. And
so you saw the full evolution.
The first gig that they did with Axl in the band, they opened for me at the Country Club. So, it's funny. I ran into Tracy Guns when he was doing Raiding the Rock Vault in Vegas, and it was like a big homecoming. But yeah, Slash was in my band Black Sheep, and those guys actually were following us around and trying to get Slash to join the band, and I didn't even realize it.
Didn't know the.
But if it hadn't have been Slash, it wouldn't have been the Guns N' Roses we know and love. So it was all meant to be.
Of course. Well, that's an amazing time. And again, we implore you to check out the website for IES. It is IESFest, FEST.com, short for festival. IESFest.com will give you all the hookups, how to get registered. It's just so much opportunities, to come out and showcase, come out and learn from those success stories, and we're going to be doing some other incredible success stories this year, inducting some great bands. If you can believe, Metallica is now an indie band. They got their catalog, just like Motley Crue. They've been working their catalog for years. Green Day, of course, was an incredible indie band, doing their thing. Nirvana coming out of Sub Pop Records, we're going to induct them. And, of course, the Foo Fighters that do things only their way. The last record recorded in Dave's garage out in the valley with no computers. How is that?
Absolutely.
Incredible success stories. We're talking about Sound City, of course, which we honored last year. The documentary that Dave had made about the legendary studio, which probably rivaled the record plant in a way. I'm sure the record plant thought they were a little, hoity-toity. Well, what's that studio out in Van Nuys? But look at what Sound City came out with, Amazing.
The record plant was a lot before.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay. So it really kicked it off. But as we wind down, Willie, implore to the people, the listeners, whether they make music, they're a musician, they shoot videos, they manage bands, they run a label, they're trying to make other movies, get involved in the touring business or merchandising or some technology and entertainment thing. Why is it important for them to come to IES and be able to glean all that information and the opportunities for connections?
Well, I found it to be very informative, to get firsthand information from a lot of the trailblazers that were there in the beginning and started a lot of things, like the lady we were talking about,
Violet Brown.
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
she's told a story about she started out just selling records at a record store,
DJing and swap meets. The next thing you know, she's discovering Dr. Dre and
crazy
and Eminem and Snoop Dogg and
pioneers,
history.
Trailblazers.
Running the business for Tech Nine now, which is an amazing success story on the independent world. And we're talking about, like I say, Joe Bonamassa. Some people don't even know who he is. The guy who made $20 million last year playing the blues on his own indie label.
Oh yeah, he was in the van he talks about being in the van for 5 years or so.
Amazing stuff.
Amazing.
You know, it is a DIY business now, but it's, you know, you're in business for yourself, but you don't have to be in business by yourself.
Right.
And like I say, the opportunity at IES is to meet people you might not ever have a
Network
chance
and
to meet
meet
otherwise.
people, yeah.
Really learn how to kind of present yourself and do business and build relationships. Because as we know, it's a very much of a relationship business.
Yes.
And then the knowledge. What we do is we try and put the spotlight on those people right now that are doing it, like a Joe Bonamassa or Tech9 or Macklemore did last year. People that are just capturing lightning in a bottle and doing it amazingly for themselves with no big company, you know, owning them or controlling them or certainly grabbing all the profit that, you know, comes. And, you know, the artists used to wait for a little crumb.
Right.
And now these artists are running the show, and these majors are, in a lot of sense, working for them. You know, Macklemore
Yes.
had ADA, had Warner, you know, distributing him. And, of course, they hired Warner's radio department, but Warner didn't own 1% of that record. It sold millions last year.
Unbelievable.
You know, so that's what we're
old
talking
thinking.
about.
The
with
record,
IES.
the big corporate record labels is very old thinking. You know,
Yeah.
to me.
I mean, you almost had to have a big-time record deal back then because they controlled radio, they controlled retail, which was really big.
Right.
And, of course, when MTV came into play, they had that, you know, MTV, BET kind of stranglehold. So it was almost – I remember back in the 70s, late 70s, where it would cost you $30,000 or more to make a record.
Right.
And now people are literally making videos on their phone and able to record tangible stuff that people buy, you know, for a few thousand, you know. And that's what's really exciting is to learn from those that are doing it, put those connections together,
Yes.
and really build upon it, you know. And IES is the place. Can't wait to have you there this year, Willie, as always. It's going to be an incredible opportunity for you to really elevate your career. So check out some of the other programs, all the great interviews we do. Check out the site again, iesfest.com. We'll see you there. It's August 6th through the 9th this year. So much more coming back. Thanks so much, Willie.
Cool.
Appreciate it.
I'm
See
going to have
there.
you on my show, too.
I love
Tales
it.
from the Sunset
We're
Strip.
going to keep it rolling right from here. See you next week on the Road to Hollywood.
Thank you.